The Ready Set Grow podcast is sponsored by Ag Expert, software designed for Canadian agriculture. Visit them today at agexpert.ca. Welcome to the Ready Set Grow podcast, where we like to showcase startup and early stage companies as well as visit with innovators in the agriculture and food industry. Today we're here with Joe Dales, co-founder of RH Accelerator, and guest Rory O'Sullivan, founder and CEO of Grain Discovery. Rory, thanks for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Grain Discovery?
Sure. So as you can tell from my accent, I'm not from these parts. So I've actually been in Canada 5.5 years now. Originally from Australia, from a town called Patchewallick, which is people who know Australia. So it's kind of 5 hours, kind of northwest of Melbourne. Typical kind of sandy loam country, all cropping. It's cropping, 15,000 to 20,000 acre farms there, fairly marginal kind of country. So always from a kind of not much of a cropping farm. It was only like 1,000 acres of cropping, but we had a fairly significant livestock operation, cattle grazing, and so obviously always from experience like agriculture growing up and after an ill-fated foray into architecture at university, I soon transferred into ag science, and from then for the past kind of 17 years, I've worked in the grains supply chain. Starting out at the local elevator, and working through multiple kind of roles throughout the supply chain, both here in Australia, Asia, Europe, and here in Canada, and actually what brought me to Canada. So I was working like in the UK in London, and I got a job for the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board. So I was in charge of kind of running the ag commodities book there, and like not many people would know that, but little old the Canada Pension Fund, a $450 billion fund, was probably one of the world's largest commodity traders, trading CME futures. And and that was a great opportunity. Not trading grain not for the profit of private enterprise, but trading grain for the profit of 23 million Canadian pensioners. And so that's what kind of brought me here to Canada, and obviously, and that's where I met my two other co-founders there at CPP. And obviously working like I'm in the ag supply chain and experiencing the pain points. I soon realized that it was a great opportunity to kind of start this company. And obviously so that was a couple of years ago. And the great thing about working for a diverse organization like CPP is, you're not surrounded by fellow Aggies, like you are in the ag industry. And like one of my colleagues, who was heavily involved in blockchain tech, he founded a blockchain group there. He did a lot of interesting stuff there. And over beers one night, and this was, I'm not sure if you can recall, but 2017 was the height of kind of blockchain, crypto, ICO kind of mania, and we thought that if you remove all the bull dust, we really thought that it was like an ideal tech stack for the supply chain, and kind of that was the I suppose like the light bulb moment to actually to start up our own company. That's kind of was, I suppose, original idea for Grain Discovery. And we're now kind of 2.5 years later, a team of 10 people, based both in Ontario, in Toronto, and in Picton in Prince Edward County. So that's kind of, I suppose, the start of Grain Discovery.
Great story, and we've followed you for a couple of years now, so really excited to hear about your progress. So give us a snapshot today. What's the, who are the customers and how are you helping them? And, what are some of the technologies that you're employing to create value?
Yeah. So Grain Discovery. We're looking at, creating this digital ecosystem, focusing both on price discovery and traceability, within that agri-food supply chain. What is price discovery, I suppose? So, this has been built and being used by real clients right now. We just launched before bean harvest here in Ontario. We created, this white label solution for grain buyers and their farmers to really, modernize the traditional handshake and, kind of digitize that very time-consuming manual process of buying and selling grain. Like we often joke about it, but it's pretty true. The concept of buying and selling grain from the farmer to that grain buyer really has remained unchanged, for generations. I suppose the biggest update has been the invention of the SMS for price discovery, like over the past 2 decades. And so what was really kind of lacking, wasn't, an open marketplace, because, trading grain is still, very much a hyperlocal, relationship-driven segment. But what was really, needed was that, customized, white label, individual customized marketplace, which integrates with, the grain buyer's existing accounting software, which really enables this seamless connection and removes, those burdensome touch points. So the marketplace has, live pricing information, instant contract confirmation, which we think is like a North American first. And, for the farmer, they can access and view their entire portfolio, their tickets, their contracts, their settlements, create target orders, cancel target orders, and so forth. And also for the grain elevator, a much more modern way to communicate with their kind of 200, 300 farmers in regard to, oh, the great deal today, or, the elevators closing times and so forth. But yeah. And so, it's a win-win, both for the farmer, and obviously, but also for the elevator, so that's been great. As I said, we just kind of launched just before kind of harvest, and I remember when we first started out, a fellow entrepreneur, he mentioned, like, when you always build ag tech, remember, it takes twice as long and twice as much. and like never a true word's been spoken. I did have experience in Australia building e-commerce platforms, or being a part of a company that was really kind of doing that. And I'm glad it's kind of working. Thus far it's been pretty good now. And, we're just priming the pump for that prime ag sales cycle come the winter and spring. And then obviously, so that's, the price discovery. So we're looking at digitizing, that, like the execution side of stuff. But also, our second half of the business is traceability. And as you know, Joe and Michael, it's such a buzzword these days with regenerative agriculture and sustainable ag. But, we really think, ag in general is really going, in the future, this important kind of shift, moving away from this pure commodities business where, each bushel was considered identical, to an ingredients business where consumers really demand kind of distinction. And obviously, with, our food passing through, multiple different hands throughout that supply chain, often that traceability and that provenance information is lost. But, the modern consumer, they're interested in knowing, where their humble little soybean kind of came from, how it's made and how it ended up on the dinner plate, or how that malt barley ended up in their beer can. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of one of our next kind of phase 2 of grain discovery is kind of really leveraging. So we've done some pretty interesting proof of concepts, some world first proof of concepts, both here in Ontario with grain farmers and Canadian seed growers, and also with Olds and Decisive out in Alberta with their beer, and really kind of, building on that solid foundation to kind of really build a more kind of commercial kind of system. And as you know, when you're looking at, traceability, like the cash crops, you can't focus on spring wheat or yellow corn, straight away. What are those crops that already have that legacy traceability, like attributes, mm-hmm. IP soybeans, malt barley, and certain specialty kind of crops, buckwheat, hemp, and so forth.
I think that's the opportunity, right? we've got so much of our agricultural, especially the grain business, in that commodity number 2 yellow corn. So how do we split off and add value? And it may not be, as you say, it may be creating ingredients for the food industry that, that the consumer will pay extra for. And so if you can, help the grain industry, which is good at commingling and being efficient, to split off and track through technology. I think that's the opportunity for grain discovery and the holy grail that you're chasing. So people keep talking about blockchain. Do you have a 30-second, what the heck is blockchain and how does it work, and how can it add value to my bushel of IP soybeans that I want to ship halfway around the world for a premium?
Yeah, for sure. And actually, before I go into like the blockchain 101, like you make a good point. It's kind of like ag. It's kind of going back to to what it was kind of back before the war in regard to it was all customized. You used to sew up the old Hessian bag like in the field and take it to the elevator. And now with since World War II, it's been that bulk commodity segment. So it's interesting how what is old is new again, so to speak, like in regard to that IP system. But blockchain, obviously it's kind of obviously before kind of COVID hit, that's on that ag speaking circuit, that's kind of what we kind of focus on, and people are interested to hear about not the abstract kind of 10,000 foot view, but how does it really make sense in ag and that supply chain. But all, and maybe it's not a 30-second explanation, Joe, but cut me off when I'm when I'm dragging on here. But I suppose think of it as, I suppose, this modern kind of database where all participants can access, read, and write to. So this open source computing platform that really provides consensus, which gives the supply chain that single version of the truth. That's blockchain. So blockchain, as I said, is just an online ledger for record keeping and data sharing, where you, the owner of that data, you retain ownership and control your data, which is very important in ag now, and you elect to share this information when it's beneficial to do so. And there's two types of blockchain, but for the ag supply chain, we think this private permission blockchain is going to really kind of take off in the ag. And so this network, it allows for the definition of roles, where every user is identified, they're verified, and they receive it, and they access this data according to their predefined permission. So for example, not everyone on a certain supply chain needs to access the entire information. They just need to accept or reject certain one stage. So the Canadian seed grower is running a node. Yes, that is certified seed for IP beans, for example. They don't need to see the purchase and sale price and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And also it's important, it's not a singular technology. It is part of this kind of digital ecosystem, ensuring all this information is recorded, accurately, and that's a good thing about the ag supply chain. There's so much great data kind of captured. Yeah. But the pain point is, Joe and Michael, is, none of this software talks to each other, like it all remains trapped in these isolated kind of data silos. And, so we think, it's the real value prop for ag is that ideal tech enabler that can connect these systems together. Either precision ag software, APIs, certain like IoT stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why we think it's going to be like a game changer. And and that's the exciting and daunting thing. There's hasn't been commercialized yet. As I said, where the proof of concepts we did with our partners, they've been kind of world first, and we're slowly kind of building out, commercializing the system. You can't looking at creating like a 747 straight away. You have to kind of create that little, was it a Kitty Hawk, like the Wright brothers first,
Yeah.
and so, build on those small and scrappy POCs and slowly, build out those things. And what's great about, traceability, unlike price discovery, everyone wants traceability, especially, for brand Canada, as Cyprus is, that like the IP soybean, is probably still the Cadillac version of cash cropping supply chain traceability in the world. But it's 20 years old, and other competitors, South Americans and the Americans, they're making a bit of a song and dance about their sustainable practices, quote unquote. And so for brand Canada, it's like, okay, how can we remain proactive in regard to changing consumer demands and making sure we're on that speed dial number one for those overseas and those domestic kind of customers. So there's been great support for those supply chain players to really go, hey, this is great, and that's and each individual has their own certain I suppose value prop. The IP processors value prop is different to the seed breeders, and so forth. Yeah. And that's, I like the great thing is, like everyone stands to gain. So that was a bit over 60 seconds, Joe, about, about blockchain. But yeah, that's how we think it fits into the ag supply chain. And there's some other really, blue sky thinking you can do with tokenizations and so forth. But that's, 5 years out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rory, it seems like you have a lot of experience sort of in this ag tech space. You just take us through, I guess, some recommendations you'd have for young entrepreneurs starting their business.
Oh, yeah. Well, it always helps if you've got money in the bank. So that was obviously, when we started, we were in our mid 30s. Pete was he's our old man in our group. He's like a couple of years older than us. But yeah, like obviously we didn't know everything, but we did have deep domain knowledge in what we're trying to do, and most importantly, not in the ag side, but also like in the tech side, and that's where those cost overruns happen, like in the tech side, and so yeah, like obviously, to I think Joe's trademark this term, but for a first time founder, just don't run out of money. Watch that runway. Watch that run rate and watch that burn rate. And so we were kind of lucky, especially in that first, year 1, year 2, that traditional death valley of startups that, we, if we needed, the extra capital, we just, that just came out of our pocket. But also what's great about Canada, which, I didn't see at all in Australia or the States, is that there's a lot of support both from the feds and the provincial for like those non-dilutive grants, and that's kind of gold dust when you start up. I still remember, our first grant with, and we just kind of started was with, Tyler Wales, OAFT, and and we thought that little 30 grand was like, was like manna from heaven, and now it's not even, half a month's burn rate. but that early recognition and that early kind of, like, hey, this makes sense from someone like kind of, experience like Tyler, was a real kind of shot in the arm in regard to, okay, let's really kind of, like we're onto something here and so forth. So, so early advice is, just don't run out of money. And also talk to a lot of people. It's hard, especially when you're building something that you just kind of, you're in the trenches. It's hard to look, 3 steps forward. And that's where you have you try to have a great, diverse kind of board and group of advisors, and it's been, I think I chatted to Joe, like very early on, and so that's been great. Joe giving us little nuggets, like along the way and so forth. And like getting with a, great group of people, and don't be discouraged because, I think sometimes in ag, especially in the grains industry, a common phrase has always been thrown around as well. It's always been done this way. And that's pretty dangerous. And, I think everyone's experienced it firsthand, like when we first started out, and, don't let that knock you at the start. so forth. Yeah.
Awesome.
What can we do to support you if we have farmers listening, we have people in the grain industry? How can they engage, and how can they learn more, and how can they, support this innovation that's coming down?
Well, apart from you signing us a big novelty check, Joe, I'm kidding. I suppose it's support is like obviously, and that's actually what we've really lacked ourselves. Just the marketing and like promoting what you're doing. Maybe our like Americans do a better job than that than us, and just kind of getting the word out. And it's incredible. We did our press release the other month, and we've got multiple large grain buyers around the world kind of saw that, go, hey, this white label private procurement platform, this makes sense for me. Can you spin this up for me? So just getting getting kind of the word out and so forth is gold dust, and just getting those those early kind of because like for what we're doing, that instant trading online on your app, that as I said, that doesn't happen. And those early kind of elevators that thought, hey, this this makes sense, those kind of I suppose people are great for then doing like warm introductions and using their great name as leverage, because in ag tech generally like no one wants to be the first 5 people using it, but as you get those first 10 customers, then that flywheel hopefully kind of spins, and so forth.
Thanks for sharing that information. I guess before we head out, is there anything else you want our viewers to know about?
I think for any kind of it's a conversation like I just had the other week with someone, like in regard to like if you want to do like an MBA, which is like 100 to 150 grand, like my advice was screw that, start a company, because you learn as the learning you do is amazing. The connections you make is incredible, and like I think starting up a company is like like the new MBA. So that's my advice for anyone who wants to not knocking Rotman. I'm a Western, but go Mustangs. But yeah.
Yeah. How can our listeners connect with you online and learn more about Grain Discovery?
Yeah, so graindiscovery.com is our domain, and Rory at graindiscovery.com is mine. Or if you're in Prince Edward County, Picton, drop in for a beer. It'd be good to catch up. We're still not in lockdown here, which is good.
I just wanted to thank our listeners for tuning in today, and I just wanted to thank you again, Rory, for joining us and telling us about Grain Discovery.
Thanks for your time, and like you guys are doing a great job too. I've always enjoyed listening to those podcasts, and I've actually made some great connections through RH. So like a round of applause for what you guys are doing there in London.
Thanks, Rory, and good luck, and really
need it.
proud to see your progress. Just keep grinding. Keep grinding.
Watch that. Yeah, just watch that burn rate.
See you later.
Cheers. Thanks.
Bye-bye.